Hello, and thank you for calling the E911 Emergency Response System. Your call is very important to us and will be handled in the order it was received. Please listen carefully to all menu options before proceeding, as our menu options change frequently. Failure to do so may cause additional delays to our response time. Due to the recent police defunding, hold times and response times may be longer than usual. At no time should you take matters of the law into your own hands. If you are calling to report a homicide in progress, please press 1 and pray. If you are calling to report a homicide after the fact, please press 2 for instructions on completing our online form. If you are calling to report a robbery in progress, please press 3 and surrender your goods. If you are calling to report a robbery after the fact, please press 4 for instructions on completing our online form. If you are calling to report domestic violence in progress, please press 5 and get the hell out now. If you are calling to report domestic violence after the fact, please press 6 for instructions on completing our online form. If you are calling to report a home invasion in progress, please press 7 and pray. If you are calling to report a home invasion after the fact, please press 8 for instructions on completing our online form. If you are calling for any other reason, please press 9 for instructions on completing our online form. To repeat this menu, please press 0. Please disconnect to terminate this call. Thank you for your time and patience and have a nice day.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Arnold. Welcome to Protect and Serve. That was amusing. That was something that was put out there, I guess, to scare people. It would be very shocking if that happened, if police defunding led to that. We want to welcome you to the show tonight. Listen, you might want to get a pen and some paper to write down what we're going to give you today. Protect and Serve is still committed to giving you the unadulterated truth and give you the inside view of what it is to be in law enforcement, as a citizen's view, to see what we do and how we do it and how you should respond to the different things that are going on in your community and around the world when it comes to law enforcement. Tonight's show is about defunding the police. What is defunding the police? There's a whole spectrum of answers. If you ask people what defunding the police is, some will tell you one thing. Some will go from taking away money from the police departments. Others will say to the abolishment of the police department. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about both of those definitions that people are using. And we want to give you some facts so that you can make an informed decision and an informed argument when you go before your city council, before your mayor or elected officials, and talk about defunding. We want you to be able to have an intelligent conversation, understand the inner workings of police departments, understand what you should do and what you shouldn't do as far as defunding. When it comes to defunding, we want to talk about the definition of it, so that when you get up there, you are clear and concise in what you are trying to say to your elected officials about how you vision or how you feel the police department should respond. On tonight, I want to bring in my guests who are no strangers to police departments being defunded. Before this actually happened, we had police departments defunding, which came to layoffs. And both of my guests tonight, they're the expert commentators I refer to them as. I'm talking about Detective Stephanie Treadwell, retired from the Newark Police Department, and Detective Anthony Cox. He's coming to us live from VA, Virginia. You be careful down there, bro.
Always.
Yeah. But listen, hey, guys and lady, listen, tonight we're talking about defunding the police department. And in doing so, doing research on this subject, there's so many things, so many definitions that we have about defund. When you talk to young people, their vision of defunding is one thing. Our age group is another. Older folks is another. And it's something that we should talk about because it's a little uneasy in the community. When you hear this word defunding, folks always think about taking money away from it. And that's true. We want to, that is a portion of what it is, but it's not maybe the way people think it is. Not taking money away. We're going to talk about what's good about taking money away and what's bad about taking away. before we get into it, I want to talk about Seattle, Washington. We know that Seattle, Washington, they had a siege. The citizens took over the East Precinct of the Seattle Police Department, took it over, and they held it for a number of days. And the chief, who was the first Black female chief of the department, she was told to stand down by city officials and to allow them to occupy that area of the city. And while they were occupying, folks were charging money. The people who set up checkpoints. So business owners who had businesses in there, they were being extorted. They had to pay money in order to go open up their business. Folks who lived in the community had to pay money to come into the area, and a lot of crazy stuff. And I even think that there was an assault. Young lady got sexually assaulted, and it was total chaos because you had not only the protesters, but you had other folks, other elements moving into that area. And of course, if you don't monitor protests, if you don't have an organized protest, it's a mob. And that's what happened in Seattle. But Seattle City Council came back and they cut the budget by, I believe it was $150 million. $150 million, which caused them to lose 100 officers. 100 officers. Their budget was only $386 million. And they cut 150. And they were asked about how did you get that number? They based their number off of the Los Angeles Police Department cuts, which were in the hundreds of millions. But the difference is Los Angeles Police Department has a budget of $1.8 billion. So 150 million is not as detrimental to a department that only has a budget of 386 million. And Los Angeles is not losing 800 officers. And the problem with that is that these 100 officers that Seattle is now losing means that people in Black and brown communities are going to suffer. And that was a decision that was based off emotionalism and political positioning, which I have a serious problem with when it comes to crime fighting. Politics, good people are fired and moved and put in positions where they shouldn't work because politically someone in the uniform did not agree with what the politician wanted them to do. Now, we all know folks who were affected by that, who had that happen to them. Good officers. I've had good officers move because of political decisions. And I don't agree that kind of thing should exist in law enforcement because it doesn't benefit anyone except the person who's making the call to make that officer be moved. That officer could be the best officer for that area, for that community. And now they're moved because they were doing their job and some politician didn't like it. And that's wrong. And this decision here, I'm sorry, Seattle, you messed up. The chief is even resigning because of not because of the pay cuts that are coming to the department. Not only they're going to lay off 100 officers, they're going to reduce their pay. And what I would say is that if that's an issue, overtime is an issue, high salary is an issue. That's stuff that's been going on for a while. It didn't just pop up with the protest of George Floyd. That's poor police management that's been going on, and city council and elected officials not doing their job. So, I want to open it up. I mean, first, let's define what is defund the police for our viewers. And, I want to hear from you guys what your take on it is defunding, what it means.
Well, from what I've read, it's to take money from one place to put it to another place in order to fund certain programs that should kind of like quell the crime or whatever. But in my opinion, instead of defunding it, and then I've talked to one of the other retired lieutenants, and she said, why not defund it, but divert the money because I mean, still, we don't have enough money right now. In my opinion, I worked for Newark, and I think that Newark was underfunded as far as funds for the police department go, as far as trying to keep up the number of police officers that was in there. But that's what's going to happen. It's not going to be enough money to take care of the people that's working. So crime, nobody's going to be able to handle that. It's just like that 911 call. I know that's a parody. However, you know, it's real. It's a real thing. And this is what can happen, because right now, with the shootings and the homicides going up, that the call for service is slowing down, and the officers, trust me, they're not doing the ones that's slowing it down. It's just that it's more work than it is for people to do. So when you start cutting, then I don't know who's gonna answer the call. You know, you ain't gonna answer anything like that. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Like also, longer hours for officers once they cut. You know, officers, 100 officers cut. They have to extend the hours. Instead of an 8-hour shift, whatever they're working, maybe a 12-hour shift. A lot of departments have gone to that, where officers have to work 12 hours a day. You know, you're tired. Those extra 4 hours wear you down.
Yeah.
And you get an attitude, you know, you're human. You're working the extra 4 hours. You get tired, going on calls back to back. And what happens? You get stressed out. You go to a call, you're tired. You may react different. People are going to react. What took you so long to get your call 4 or 5 hours ago? You're just getting a call.
Yeah.
You know, maybe backed up in the queue, but you're just getting it. They just sent me. Then they, you know, there's a whole other issue. So
yeah,
apart from what you actually responded to that call for.
That's correct. And now our viewers might not understand what the queue is. Why don't you tell them what the queue is?
Queue is, you know, calls like, say, you have a domestic incident. You called it in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You call into the dispatcher. You're having an argument with your spouse that you want them out. If they're backed up and there are other calls that are higher in crime, like say there's a robbery or a shooting or a type of assault, that may go on a certain list, you know, on priority calls. Maybe a car accident or a 911 call, somebody, a prank. All these things coming, you know, into effect that, you know, what this queue is. When the dispatcher gives you that call, say she gives it to you, he or she gives it to you at 4:30. You don't know what's going to happen once you get there. So you're just getting the call at 4:30. The caller actually called at 4. That's 30 minutes that went by. You've worked, say you've worked 11 hours already. You're tired. You go there. You have to deal with that call no matter what it is. If there's an arrest that comes out of it, you have to stay until the arrest, you know, till the paperwork is finished. There may be another precedent, a call at higher on crime that comes as soon as you get there. There have been times where the dispatcher has pulled officers off of one call to respond to another higher crime call. So then the victim is really upset now. What do you mean wait? I can't wait. You have to wait.
Yeah.
You know, they actually pull you or send a supervisor there, go to this other call, we'll be right back.
Right.
So it's you know, whatever calls in line, whatever comes first, basically, the higher crime.
And by the time you get there, they are angry.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would be too.
And I would be, absolutely. But
Yeah.
let me just, I'm sorry guys, but let me just add, I do believe in having all these extra programs to, you know, to help the community and violence prevention and all these type of things. But what I just don't know is that when they do the police budget, are those type of things added into the budget? Because I know for a fact that a lot of us as police officers, we went in our pocket and spent our own money to try to do things to help with the community, and you know, and there's a lot of the precincts that did it too, and I just don't know where was this money if it's for police services. Yeah, where I mean, y'all didn't, you know, kind of like add this in the budget separate and apart from that. I don't.
Well, you know what? There's a couple of things that you said that. But I'm going to go back to what Tony was talking about with the queue first, and then I'm going to come back to you, Steph, because our viewers need to understand that and Steph, you and Tony both were on the job when this happened, because I was on the job. Where sometimes when they classify the jobs, you didn't get the job. People were getting response to calls they made 24 hours later because there was not enough police officers to get around. Like Tony said, if you had a DV, a domestic violence, and you called the police department and you weren't really seriously injured, it wasn't gun, knife, or something like that, the police who were responding, if a shooting came over, they were diverted to the shooting because that was a priority job. And the problem is, when you take away officers, each department has to do an assessment of how many officers per capita that they need in order to safely protect the citizens of their jurisdiction. When that's not done, or when you take away and go below that, you have chaos. Now, the criminals know when they know your call time. I remember investigating a burglary, and no offense against Newark, to all my Newark people, because I love Newark. My dad was a Newark person, but he said that he hated doing burglaries in Newark. And I found it funny because I said, well, why? I said, Newark is the biggest city. They have the businesses. He said, because I can't tell when the cops are going to come. He said, if I do a burglary in East Orange, they come 5 minutes. They leave, I go inside. Once the alarm goes off, I'll test them. West Orange, 2 minutes. But those towns don't have the workload. He said, but Newark, man, I could break in the place. Nobody will come for 2 hours. And then I'll go in and I get caught. So, it was because Newark's workload. Let me tell you something. My dad used to tell me, as a desk lieutenant for the night for the city of Newark, that he used to run the city of Newark, the entire city, all 5 wards, with 6 cars. 6 cars. If one person called out sick, that was an alpha car or a one-man car. Mm-hmm. 6 cars for the entire city of Newark. That's crazy. And what happens is when you take away 100 officers from a department, the black and brown community suffer. Why? Because that's where the crime is. Unfortunately, it's in our neighborhood. Folks, we have large populations. Criminals go where there's large population, more opportunities. Our folks are coming home from work because they work late night shifts. They doing essential services, working in restaurants and stuff like that. And they go home. Listen, it's not that they want to be out there at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, but they have to. They got to get home. And it's an opportunity to be preyed upon. So, of course, they flock to the area and they commit crimes. And when there's not enough officers to respond to those crimes, that's a problem. And that's a problem I have with Seattle, because now the people who are going to suffer are going to be the people in black and brown communities.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. I just want to give you the definition of the funding that I found. And Steph, you were on point. It said, defunding the police is a slogan that supports divesting funds from police departments and reallocating them to non-policing forms of public safety and community support. So viewers, understand that defunding does not mean that you're going to take away money and not do anything. Take away money from the police department and not do. You're going to take away money. You're going to reallocate money that they have, if they have it. Because as Steph said, everybody thinks because they have a $1.5 million budget that they have a lot of money. They do not. They do not. I remember as deputy director of Newark, we couldn't buy cars. The Newark cars and most city cars, look at them. They're run down. And unless you have forfeiture money, which we're going to get into, to buy new cars, the cars are bad. I've been on a transition team with one town. The mobile data terminals that they had in their cars, the software was out of date, which makes it illegal. They're not even supposed to be using it to run license plates. And that's a public health hazard and an officer health hazard. Because if you can't run plates, you don't know who you're dealing with when you pull them over. Mm-hmm. And that this wasn't paid because they just didn't have the money. So now we talk about the National Night Out and stuff like that, Steph, as you were talking about. When they do the budget, do they include that? No, they don't. They should. But the problem is they don't have the police budget is so tightly monitored. They don't have money for that. That's why you and everybody else, when I had community affairs, they used to go out to the community and receive monies from the community to help support the National Night Out. And based upon what community you went to, some communities were more affluent and had more money to donate to the police department than others. That's why if you went down east and you went to the north, there was a party going on. So what we decided to do was move National Night Out to one location where the whole city, even those in the west and the south, where the businesses didn't have that type of money to donate, the children who we did National Night Out for would benefit, and everybody would benefit. So we provided buses to the community. We did that type of thing, so that everyone could enjoy National Night Out, regardless of what ward you lived in. Now, when we talk about defunding, it came about. The proponents for defunding. They gave their different reasons, and I want to get into it, and you guys can jump in. One, I found this very interesting. One of the reasons why they wanted to fund the police is because effectiveness. They did not feel that the arrests made by police every year were effective. They said that 5% of the arrests were for non-violent crimes and did not, and that's why the police departments were not effective. They said the majority of those arrests were for non-violent offenses, such as drug offenses, and 80% of the arrests were for low-level crimes and offenses such as disorderly persons, disorderly conduct, drug abuse violations, mainly possession, traffic violation, local ordinance violations, and failure to pay fines. When folks didn't pay fines, they got arrested by the police. The majority of the drug abuse violations were because drug possession. All right. And these are going between 1980 and 2016. They said the arrests increased by 170%. And then most of the arrests. Now, this is what happens. Most of the arrests become dismissed. They get dismissed. And they couldn't track the number because there was a conflict between the court data and police data. And I know that to be a problem because we had officers who didn't show up in court, but yet the judges kept holding the cases over. And normally in other jurisdictions, when the officer doesn't show up or your witnesses don't show up, it is dismissed. All right. So that's what happened. All right. The second reason for defunding the police, racism, meaning that a lot of the foundational law enforcement is rooted in racist practices established from the slave patrol, which we know the history of police departments in America stem from the slave patrol and for Jim Crow laws. We know that there's a problem. We talk about police departments. There is systemic racism in the police departments because of what is built on. Listen, we used to have a saying in school, you are what you eat. Remember that? You are what you eat.
Yes.
And when you come on, one of the things that we saw with the George Floyd case was that there was one senior guy there, but the other guys that were involved and got arrested, they were new. They were like 2 weeks on the job. Mm-hmm. So the practice is when you have a trained officer, you listen to what that trained officer says, whether it's right or wrong. Yeah. Exactly. You listen. You don't know. You're a young officer. So it has to be changed, and a lot of it is racism. So the racism is passed down. The systemic racist practices are passed down from the leadership. And one of the problems I have with all this talk about police reform is that you cannot hold line officers accountable for police reform and not include the leadership. Everybody up to the top, man or woman, should be held to the same accountability, go through the same courses, the same re-education. Because what would I look like as a director of a police department out there trying to do Title 39 when the laws have changed by now? You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on. I mean, we stay affluent and up to the law if we're in an active, proactive unit and we're out there making arrests and it involves pulling over cars. So we tighten up on our Title 39. But for those of us who were in DB for a long time and haven't wrote the ticket in 10, 15 years, man, exactly. What's like going out there trying to write a ticket? Exactly. You get eaten up in court. You know, you're writing a ticket for making the right turn on red. But bro, the right turn on red law has been passed. years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So so the leadership in police departments have to be held accountable. And classism. This is another reason why they want to defund the police departments. Classism. And I was a big proponent. I always got in trouble for this. This is when law enforcement is different for the ruling class than it is for the working class. So those folks that live in the suburbs, they got a different service from the police departments. They got different favors, and their kids, when they got arrested, they didn't see the youth house. Our kids get arrested first time offense for something stupid that they do. As a child, they go into the youth house, put in there with hardened thugs and criminals, and they're getting abused, or they're making connections that we don't want them as parents to have. And then then the whole life just starts cycling and spinning out of control, because now we're trying to figure out how you getting all this money, but while he was in the youth house for those type of charges, that he joyride. Who didn't joyride in a car, in a stolen car? A lot of kids do that. And if you got caught, then you knew you was going to youth house. So the thing is that classism, and I used to get in trouble because I used to always say the same amount of resources that we dedicate to someone getting killed in the suburbs, the same amount of resources should be dedicated to murders in the hood,
urban areas. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? There were so many cases. It hurt me because we understand that the Raheem and Pookie, they're going to go at each other, personal conflict, drug turf wars, or whatever. But what about the young kids who are getting robbed and killed at the hands of just hardened thugs and criminals? When we were there, I think, Steph, it was a club. I think if you remember this murder, it was a murder of a young boy. They went into a club. They came out. He was in the back seat of a car, and they shot him and killed him for no reason.
That's almost like a normal occurrence. Sad.
Yeah, right. But guess what? A lot of those cases go unsolved because the resources are not dedicated. And I went to the funeral personally because the young man was a friend of my daughter. They went to school together. He had a promising life in front of him, and someone took out his life. And I was not in the prosecutor's office anymore. I was the deputy director of Newark. So the case wasn't with us because the prosecutor's office is responsible for homicides. And I remember when I spoke to her, when she saw Jala, she said, "This is your dad?" And she was trying to figure out who it was. I offered my condolences. She said, "They killed my baby." Those are the most hurting words. To hear a mother scream at the loss of her child is something that you will never forget. And I will never forget how hurt she was. And I was so upset that this case they were not brought to justice because it was a senseless killing. But I know that there are other cases that went beyond the borders of Newark, that they put 20, 10, 15 officers, detectives on it.
Bring other agencies in, I had a few when I was with the prosecutor's office that suburban areas had a homicide and everyone's there except for the FBI if they weren't called. My thing is call them for every homicide.
Right.
Have those, like you said, those same agencies or put that same resource in to solving every homicide.
Right.
And yes, you get overwhelmed, but this is what happens. This is our job.
Right.
You get overwhelmed with it, but this is what you signed up for.
Right.
And
you're right.
Do it.
You're right. Everyone deserves that type of service.
Everyone.
Doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter if you graduated from Harvard or if you graduated from Essex County College or if you graduated from Barringer High School.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve this type of service that we give. We are called to that. And I'm going to ask Steph this, because Steph, you should have an answer. Are there quotas in when you was in Newark? See, we can talk now because we're not hired by the city or the county. So we can tell the truth now. All right. Are there quotas? People want to know, are there quotas?
Don't ask me. I didn't work in the quota department. And I didn't write tickets, so from what I understand, it as far as what tickets, the only thing I ever heard about quota was tickets.
Right.
But then they were saying it wasn't no quota, but try not and bring no tickets up in there.
So Tom, what about you, man? Because I know, I didn't think about quota. I didn't have to do quota because I was a traffic guy. So, I already had numbers.
certain units, street units, they didn't call it a quota. Or even when I was in patrol, they had overnight parking. Certain supervisors, you'd be in line up. Okay, make sure you ticket all the parking tickets on all the parking cars on Park Avenue between a certain time. And they will come behind you if you weren't writing enough tickets. Oh, you didn't see this car parked? Like, you're not writing enough tickets.
Right.
And they will put that on your evaluation.
Right.
Other units I was in, supervisor come in, all right, you have a nice, write-up or a nice weekend if you get a certain number of arrests. So, they're not going to call it a quota, but they give you that little hunch like, do your job. Make sure you do.
Right.
A holiday weekend is coming up. You all want to be off? Let's get some numbers in here. It's a numbers game. And they compare it. This is all before, crime stats and all that came in the way they are now, holding those meetings. But they have them. Make sure you get those arrests.
Right.
The corner, let me see. Walnut and William Street back in the early 80s. You have a lot of complaints coming in about drugs or different crimes going on. Make sure you're there patrolling that area.
Mm-hmm.
They get, certain names, calls come in.
Right.
And your supervisor will be on you. Oh, this is going on in your area, your zone. Why aren't you taking care of it? You have an arrest. All right, let's hurry up, get that done, get back out there. Right. So that's telling you, it's not saying you have a quota to lock up a certain amount of people, but you finished, you talking, let's go. Let's go get back on the street. Right. Dispatch is calling you, we're having this, that, what I mean? So you may not call, they're not going to call it a quota, but it's out there.
Right. So to our viewers, we're going to get to some of these questions. I see some of the questions are coming in. We're going to get to them. So this is one thing what they did in management. This is the management issue. What management did was they didn't call a quota because in 2014, I believe 2014, New Jersey passed a law that police departments and municipalities cannot work on a quota system. You cannot fire, demote, or promote an officer based on their productivity or non-productivity of ticket writing. So what police departments did was they said, well, we're evaluating progress because the law allows them to record the number of tickets that their department writes as a whole. So they would say, oh, okay, well, like you said, Tony, your productivity is down. So on one transition team, I heard it was said that the mayor went to the police department, looked in the cell block, and didn't see anyone locked up and said the cops aren't doing their job. So I was like, well, wait a minute. That doesn't mean that. It means that maybe the cops are doing their job. But why does someone have to lose their freedom? And why are you under the impression that the cops are not doing their job because people are not locked up? That was a dumb thing, but that's the mindset, and that's why that law was passed. So we, ladies and gentlemen, understand there's a law against quotas in the state of New Jersey, and if you see, as Tony said, like different times of the year that there's like ticket blitzes and stuff like that, and officers are just being very aggressive and pulling over stupid stuff. Yeah, those are things that need to be brought up at city council meetings. Okay, and you need to question the leadership in the police department. Are you doing a quota? And those numbers are supposed to be readily available to you as a citizen. You have a right to that information, and I would exercise that right every chance I got. I want to get to one question because it brings us to my next point for defunding. Brother Hassan Abdus Sabor, he said, isn't defunding the police about reallocating funds so that police aren't dispatched on calls like drug overdoses, homeless peoples, and calls like that? Yes, Brother Hassan, you are absolutely right. One of the other arguments for defunding the police is called unbundling of services. Unbundling of services. And critics argue that police officers and departments provide too many services that are non-police related. There's an over-reliance on law enforcement. If the cat's in the tree, call the police. Mm-hmm. A perfect example was when you had issues of homeless of people with mental abuse. And I spoke to a friend of mine who's very big into mental illnesses. And officers were responded. I believe Maplewood had an incident where it brought the attention of dealing with mental illness. It was real. The family had called the police because the young man was acting up. He was in crisis. He was in mental health crisis. The police responded, and because of lack of training and using non-lethal force and de-escalation, they wound up killing this young man. They wound up killing him. And a lot of times, police officers are called to scene, especially when the family members are yielding knives and stuff like that. Okay, those type of things you'll call the police department for, because you need that type of assistance. But police officers can be trained better. If we can do hostage negotiation, if we can do entries, and we can do all these other type of tactical trainings, we can do trainings to help deal with people with mental illnesses, and that's what it is. So defunding the police department is a lot of times. They said that, for example, one study found that 21% of police officers' time is spent responding or transporting people with mental illness. That's a big number. That's a big number. And one in 4 people who are killed by the police has some type of severe mental illness. I watched a video today of a young lady who they thought was involved in an accident. And I was wondering, why was she freaking out? Now, the police in me said she's got something to hide, because that's what we're trained on. But the reality was she was detained, she was placed in cuffs. And of course, with everything that's going on, mentally, she wasn't there. She had responded as if someone was guilty. And they did the investigations, preliminary investigation, found out that she was telling the truth. So the officers were wrong. So yes, there's going to be some type of problem. But yes, so defunding, Brother Hassan, is instead of taking a portion of the police budget that comes from the city, and we're going to talk about that in a second, taking a portion of that money and putting it to civilian entities that are better equipped to deal with that. So now when you get a call about homeless people harassing folks in Penn Station or whatever, it doesn't call for a police response. It could be whatever unit the community, listen to what I'm saying now, whatever unit the community demands of the police department or the administration to put together to deal with those type of issues, because it's not something that's cookie cutter. It's different. Every town has a different issue with different people. When you go to Bloomfield, I see people who I don't expect to be considered homeless who are homeless. They don't look like homeless people, but they're homeless because this is the pandemic, the economy, stuff like that. So they look a lot different than the homeless that I see when I go to Penn Station in North or the train station in East Orange. So each community has to be involved in putting together a unit that works with trained professionals who are able to deal with this type of issue. And yes, that money should be diverted to those people. And if you take that money away, take the responsibility away. What I'm saying is, if you take that $2 million, make sure that you give it to trained people who are qualified and capable of handling the situation. Don't say, you have people coming in to do the job and they don't do the job because they don't want to be called at 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock at midnight.
Midnight.
Because let the police handle it because they're out there. No, you're going to go. All right. You're going to respond. So yes, that is one of the things that one of the definitions that the funding should be, is the reallocating, as Detective Treadwell said earlier. Brother Al Frazier, my brother Therese Frazier, he said, do most of law enforcement officers work 12-hour shifts here in New Jersey or in most cities? Yeah, Tone, I think, you had a little interaction. I think some work 8, 10, 12.
8 hours. One city just started, maybe within the last year, started working 12 hours. Then they were losing a lot of officers, and they were mandated to work
Right.
doubles. So it depends on the department, basically. Each department is different. But normally it's 8 hours, unless that department goes for 12-hour shifts.
Right.
So it's up to the department or the municipality that they work in.
Or
Yeah.
in emergencies, just like COVID or something like that.
They may hold them over. Yes.
Right. Right. That's mandatory. That's mandatory overtime. But on a regular shift, Brother Frazier, yes, some departments, because of manpower shortages and contractual obligations, they will work 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts. They will work 4 on 4, 3 on 2, or whatever. And some units will work a regular 8-hour shift, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or they'll rotate so that they cover some weekends. It's all about providing the number of officers that you need in order for coverage for essential services. And that seems to be one of the issues. That's one of the issues that I was talking about earlier about defunding the police with Seattle. When you cut 100 officers, they abruptly cut it, and that's a problem, because now you're thrown into you throw the department into a situation that they can no longer handle essential calls for service, that require police response. And it's just not about crime in our community. Police departments deal with external factors, because let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there are factors outside in the world we live in today. There are factors outside of just crime in our community that police departments are trained to deal with. I was on a call the other day about some white supremacist groups and other type of terrorist groups that are starting to form and rise up. And if they ever respond, ever start initiating an attack, who's going to respond to that? Who are you going to have to respond to that? Who's going to start responding to the crime in your own neighborhood with the lack of police? Because bad guys know when the police work. They knew when we work. They know
schedule, everything. Yeah.
And they would wait till we get off work, at the end of our shift, and they will come out and cause mayhem. So, here it is. We're in a pandemic. Let me just put this out here. We're in a pandemic. People are not working. People need to eat. Self-preservation is the number one priority of every human being. And when things get bad and they start coming in your house doing home invasions, they said the number of gun sales amongst people of color are up in the hundreds per jurisdiction, because folks are preparing for what's getting ready to happen. So let's not be foolish and let's not be emotional about the funding of the police department, because you might bite off more than you can chew. So what we have to do, not like Seattle, is that we have to do a systematic plan, a well thought out plan on how to defund and reallocate funds from the police department to the community organizations and community groups that will help patrol our communities and provide services that are non-police functions. So that's one of the things we need to be aware of. So now the question is, and this is something else you can jump in. What should the funding look like in our communities? What should it look like in our communities? Let's go. I've been doing a lot of talking, but let me hear from the experts.
Since right now, say if a department has police athletic league, depending on if they have the money, certain money allocated towards that, we're in a pandemic right now. Why don't you allocate certain money and put that in another program where it can help kids or parents that can't afford certain things? PPE, food,
right?
Basically feeding them. Reallocate money towards. You can go as far as buying vehicles for a police department. That comes from certain grants that they get. Instead of buying 15 cars, buy 12. Cars get beaten up. Yeah. And everybody doesn't need a brand new car. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. When they buy cars, they buy it for the city, or depends on the town. You may see brand new Chevys, whatever they're going for, Ford, Chevys, but everyone doesn't need a brand new 2021 vehicle.
if you have that
different grants, different things that they do, but you see light shining and cars coming out. Reuse those vehicles that you have.
Right.
The ones that aren't total. It's just a whole new system that like you said, you have to get a whole new system and start from the bottom and work your way up.
That's right. That's right.
Start from the top and work your way down.
There you go. There you go. I like that better. I like that
Yes.
better. Steph, what you
Start
think?
from the top.
What you think?
Oh boy, it's just so much they need. I'm thinking it's a good what Tony said about, the feed the kids and whatever, because I'm telling you, our mayor made sure the kids, the seniors, everybody else that needed something to eat. I mean, you go in parks and everything. That's a good thing, but we need to have some type of program that can help families. It's a breakdown in families, and they have to be taught. Honestly, you have a child. It does you don't get a manual with that, and a lot of people just don't know how to raise their children.
Yeah.
So to have maybe programs such as that to help them. Even if we donated a little bit of time into showing them other sides. I always wanted like seniors to tell kids the history and old stuff and stuff that they know, because all they know is what they see on TV or something they learned, and most of that is for entertainment purposes only, not necessarily to teach them. So those programs that people wanted to take the police funds and put them into, those that money should have been there anyway, So those are my biggest things. And it's just so much pain going on with people just dying and being hurt, and the kids, they scared to go to school, and the bullying and all this other kind of stuff. It's just too much of that, and I wish I could take their pain away, but we're gonna have to figure out something to do, because we're gonna have to do it.
Well, you're absolutely right, and this is where I want to say, because I see a couple of questions coming, and a couple of people are hitting it right on the head. When you talk about the funding, we're talking about redirecting, reallocating. One of the things Hubert Williams did, the first Black police director in Newark, did. I remember my dad was a part of it. He did a community program called CRISP, and what they did was that money was dedicated to the community to establish community patrols. It was worked out in the South District. Same issue. They didn't have money to really do it. My dad went out, spent money to build his own office. He was given some. He bought it. He got an office space over on Lyons Avenue, I believe. They went in there, fixed it up, him and a couple other detectives. And then they had a community patrol where they had uniforms. They had everything, And now in this day and age, when we take the money, when we reallocate the money, we have to do it. We have to send it out there and put it with community organizations who do this work every day. They do it every day and familiar with it, with the people, the procedures and stuff like that. And we can redirect it. The thing that I want the viewers to understand is that the money you're talking about reallocating is a small portion of the police budget, because a lot of the police budget is funded through grants and it's funded through federal money. It trickles down. So in order to talk about defunding, you have to know this. You have to know that forfeiture money is untouchable. There are things that we couldn't even do as managers in police departments with forfeiture money, because the law is set. You cannot use this for that. And you had to make sure that, you spent it, and then you had to be accountable. You had to know where it was. If you bought 10 computers, when the auditor comes, you better come. When they come, you better take them right to where those 10 computers are, numbers and everything. If you bought 10 cars, one better not be over at the mayor's house or the councilwoman's house. You better have 10 police cars in your parking lot, or they better be assigned to detectives. So, those are the things that you have to understand. And the only way you're going to change that is you're going to have to go above the chief of police, above the public safety director, above the mayor, the governor. You have to go right to the federal government, because that money was started by the war on crime by Lyndon B. Johnson after the 67 riots. That's where you see the Bearcats and all the other type of militarization that is coming through, as well as Homeland Security, those type of grants. That stuff is untouchable. But the other money that comes out of the city budget, pays for the majority of the officers' salaries, overtime, benefits, and contributions to pension. So what's left is what directors and public safety directors and chiefs of police have to try to finagle and scrape and borrow and do what they can do over here and there to put those programs in. But the city does that. The city pours into the police budget for those services. And I think what the thing now for defunding is that they're going to start, like I'll look at Newark, the mayor of Newark, he already allocated him, Mayor de Blasio, Chicago, LAPD, they already allocated about so many millions of dollars to go to community services within their city. Okay. So what does it look like in our communities? It is redirecting funds to the community. That's one of the things, to start community initiatives, to start things where people are going to be qualified to do the job that's needed in the community, and to invest, as Stephanie said, in the children and our seniors, stuff like that police normally respond to and get paid to do, or money's put in the department to do that. But we really don't do it because we're so bogged down with other stuff. So let that money be reallocated to what needs to be done. The other thing is not having police officers go to non-criminal or non-police calls. That's another way you can defund. Also, what de Blasio did in New York was he took all the anti-crime. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, if this is going to be good or what, but he took all the plainclothes anti-crime guys out of circulation to put them into uniforms and back in the bureaus, precincts as detectives. And one thing I could see that being good is it will help work on the cases that are being unsolved. Mm-hmm. Because you got an anti-crime unit out there along with regular patrol, and they're bringing in cases and no one's solving them. We have a case in Newark that's on Facebook about a young boy, young male who was beat up by a store owner in the city of Newark. And one of the responses was that the detective was going to come back tomorrow to fetch the videotape. Now, you and I know if I committed a crime and it's on videotape and they leave me with the videotape, guess what? That videotape's going somewhere. So that didn't make any sense to me. But because of the workload, you got, a precinct of 400 cops and only 20 detectives. That caseload is like 250 cases detectives are carrying. So, and then on top of that, you have all these other cases that come from all your other units. So you have to really be careful when you're doing that type of defunding. That's what we have to be careful. What we're telling you, the viewers, to make sure these are the things we don't want you to do. We want you to make sure that your council people and elected officials do not abruptly cut police funding. No, because you are going to suffer. You're going to be the one that is going to see problems in your neighborhood. You're going to be the one that is going to have essential services that you already are not getting cut even further. So you want to make sure that when your council people are talking about defunding, go to the meetings.
Voice your opinion.
Information. Yes, take this information. Go there. Make sure they don't diminish the number of police officers that you have per capita, because as you have the detractors, the people who are saying defund the police, you have the experts who are looking and saying, listen, crime has been shown to be lower when you have more cops, because the visibility is a deterrent in the neighborhood. So you don't want to cut off your deterrent. Listen, cops can't do everything, but their presence can cut down a lot of stuff that goes on. Believe me when I tell you, when we had our crime meetings, a lot of stuff, when we talked to the people in the neighborhood, they said, because your presence is here, this is not going on now. And they're no longer here because you put cops here who were standing on the corner. That's all we did. We just stood on the corner. We said, listen, y'all can stand on the corner. We can stand here on the corner. So we did that. And when we did it, they stopped coming and hanging and selling drugs and keeping everybody from walking down the street. So that's what we wanted to do. We just came out and became part of the community, and that's community policing. I think that when you go to these meetings, when you hear them say defund the police, if your political leaders are not talking about reallocation of funds, they don't know what they're talking about. They're either doing political positioning or emotionalism which is not going to help you at all. So make sure that when you go to these meetings, you listen to what your council people are talking about, what they're saying. And if they don't know what they're talking about, you interject and make sure that they know before they touch anything. The worst thing you want to do is put somebody behind the wheel of a car that doesn't know how to drive. Make sure they don't drive your community into the ground. And in all fairness, if you're going to take the money away, take the responsibility away. And make sure you have, listen, you could have meetings as far as who's going to come there. Who's going to come there? You know, you can make sure that you can put people in those offices who are trained. And that way your cops can be more out in the community just helping to deter crime. Well, Darryl Weberton, who retired not too long after us, you know, he said cops on the corner was bad for business. Exactly. It was bad for business. It was bad for business. They didn't want to come around because the cops was, and listen, you can do this without violating people's rights. You can police effectively without violating people's rights. You can. I've done it. I don't have those. I didn't have those type of complaints in my file from internal affairs. Why? Because I knew the law and I knew how to abide by the law and still do my job. And what you should be doing, ladies and gentlemen, holding your leadership accountable. Holding them accountable. If you have crime going out the roof, you should be asking them, why is he still here? Why is she still here? You know, you like they do in the suburbs. Man, that wouldn't happen up there, man. I'm telling you. When I travel from city to city in my present job, man, it is like night and day what I see as far as police department. It's not about it being a big city, because I see big cities and they're doing things differently. So it's all about getting out of that mindset that these people are experts and that's why we're recycling. No, man, the times are changing. If anything, the children are changing the world, and we better catch up.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. It's gonna, you know, like they let go 100 cops. And prior to that, they took over a precinct. Some of the, you know, crime people in the community. So
yes.
With 100 cops gone now, what will they do? If they did that with 100 on, what are they going to do now with 100 off? So it's going to be interesting what happens in that town.
There's going to be signs. Pray for Seattle. I'm telling you, because and you know who should be locked up is the leaders, the city council who made that decision. All right, granted, we all know there needs to be reform. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, because not only, you know, I'm former law enforcement. It's in my blood. That's what I do. I did for 30 years. I'm still doing it. But I have children. I have children that could be affected by some wrong police policy. You know, some police officers who go out there, like Tony said, they've been out there stressed out, working 12 hours, and now they want to go home. Now they're being held over. So who they take it out on? There's a complaint right now that I heard from a UPS guy. Now, wait a minute. Now I'm upset because now you messing with my Amazon Prime. You know, you messing with my deliveries. Don't be messing with the UPS man. Man, he bringing me my stuff, man. And I heard that some officers jumped on him because I know when he comes here, and I don't blame him. He plays the music in his truck because he's in the hood. He want people to know he there. You know, they got mad, told him turn his music down. Blah blah blah. I said, is he what? And then tell me if I take this belt off, this gun belt off, I'll show you what I'm gonna do. What kind of that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff. That's the reason why people are talking about defunding. Then the cops have the nerve to have attitude. So, you know, there needs to be reform. There has to be reform, because we cannot go on the same way we have. We cannot have another George Floyd where someone blatantly in front of national TV kills someone. I mean, the whole time was 8 minutes and 46 seconds that they sat there and sat on his neck. We cannot allow that to happen in our community. We cannot with our officers, not the ones that we pay to protect and serve us. So we're giving you this information, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that you're better informed when you go and engage. You know, you have a lot of elections coming up. You have a lot of county community meetings coming up. Take this information, watch this show afterwards, listen to what we're saying, go through the comments, because we have some people who are contributing. Christopher Scott, he was saying that you and him, Tony, were hired in the neighborhood program, safe neighborhood. I was in the academy.
SNU.
Yeah, you know,
1986.
see, that's grant money. You know, that's for a specific thing. So when you talk about defunding the police, you can't cut that budget because that's grant money. And the only way that's going to change is if you go to the top. You know,
we had to walk. You know, we were there hired to walk the streets.
Yeah. Yes. And Chris, you're right. I just said it. I just said the same thing. Not radical or emotional reform. We cannot respond. We cannot respond to these type of events based on emotion. It has to be well thought out. I think Seattle, I think there was, and not only Seattle, but a couple other mayors made some decisions to fire police. And guess what? They're going to get their job back. Believe me when I tell you, they're going to get their job back because in some situations they did nothing wrong. What it looked like it was wrong, but that's what they're trained to do. So if you want to not see that, then change the training, do the reform. You understand? So, you know, but you can't respond like that because now you fired these officers, they get their job back, plus all this back pay, and it's egg in your face, and now all your constituents and everybody's looking at you like you crazy. And that was a rookie, as we say in the job, that's a rookie mistake, you know. And listen, Dalton Price, how you doing, brother? He said there's always time for self-reflection. There's nothing wrong with improving the image of police. He's exactly right. But community, listen, you can be a part of us improving the image of police officers. Your input is essential right now. They are listening. So speak up, engage, vote, go to those meetings, do those things. You need to do all of those things because if you know, we say become the change you desire, the change you seek. Know that saying? Become the change that you desire. If you want to see that type of police, that police department in your neighborhood, do it. Let me tell you something. I know the power of community. I've lived in a community where they changed the law, the state law, because you know in New Jersey you can't make a turn across a double line, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right against the law. So guess what they did? They went to a community meeting, a council meeting.
Double lines.
They changed that. They erased it.
Like somebody said back in the day, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
That's right.
So,
and they come together. They came together, and guess what? I rode up there. I said, I saw people making a turn. I said, when they still this? They changed the law. I looked down at the street because you know we used to write a ticket. If you cross that double line, we got you. You know, but they changed it. So why not in your community? Why not in our community? Why can't we demand the same thing? And if we put leaders in there, we vote, yeah, we get behind them and we support them, and then we don't get anything. That has to stop. I think it's going to stop now that because young folks are not going to stand for it. You know, I'll give my applaud to my young people out there. They are doing an awesome job.
They're going in.
They're going in. They're going in. And as I said, as we get ready to close, you know, I put it on Facebook today. I said, you know, listen, us, meaning this age group right here, we ought to fight like hell to tear down anything that is an obstacle to our young people so that they can get to the destination that they're trying to get to. Not for them, but for their children.
Their children.
That's biblical right there. Other groups do it, but in our community, for some reason, the only thing we want to pass on is sweet potato pie recipes and fried chicken recipes. And I'm tired of that, okay? I want to see generational wealth be passed on. I want to see, you know, information being passed on. I want to see a lot more from our people to our people because there are so many things that are disproportionate. The wealth gap, crime in our communities, everything. So, you know, here in Protect and Serve, we're trying to give you the information to change those dynamics in your community. So listen, it's time to go, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for spending time with us on today. I thank my guest. Tony's all the way down, you know, on the road, but he stopped in to pour into this conversation. Steffi, thank you for helping me with the research on this. I appreciate it. And thanks for the comments. And listen, congratulations to Senator Kamala Harris for being Joe Biden's pick for vice president. The women are doing it, bro. The women are doing it. we applaud his decision to have the boldness to put a woman on the ticket, and especially a black woman on the ticket for vice president. We are just so happy, man, you know, that we are being more progressive in the United States. We don't want to go back. If making America great again means we're going backwards, man, get me off this boat. Let me go forward, okay? 5, 6, 8, what is it, 8 speed now in the car? 8 speed, straight ahead, 100 miles an hour, hair on fire. That's me, all right? I'm not going back to anything. So listen, everybody be safe, be well, enjoy yourself. We enjoy this weather because we're getting ready to go into fall. Storms are coming. Be careful. And listen, when you have this conversation again with your friends, come back to this show, listen to what was being said, look at the comments, and make informed decisions to your community to bring true police reform, and make sure that those who are hired to do the job of protecting and serving is protecting and serving you. Okay? Yep. So have a good night. God be with you. Godspeed. Talk to you soon. See you next Wednesday, same time at the same place.
Take care.
Have a good night.